All right, welcome back to Mr. Holloway's Foundational Python Skills series. This video we're going to talk about variables. All right, variables are used in all programming languages. It's a very simple concept, and I want you to imagine a variable as being a box, right? And here we have a box, and you can put things inside of the box. You can store them. You can take things outside of the box. You can put things back in, and that's what a variable is. So let's look at what that looks like in Python. All right, so I am going to create a variable on line 1. So let's create a very simple variable, and let's call this variable name. Okay, so I've just created a variable called name. Actually, let's call it first. We'll call it first name. All right, now notice that I did the underscore. I'm going to talk about that in a second. I'm going to say first name is Bob. Okay, and now we can take up the print function and we can print the name out. So I'm going to go print, and then I'm going to just say name. Okay, so let's see what happens. So I'm going to print run, and we got an error. Well, why do we have an error here? Well, because I'm not paying attention, that's why. Because I said the variable is first name and I printed name. So come on, Mr. Holloway, get it together. So I'm going to do first name. Okay, so that will get rid of the error. And by the way, this is a good time to look at errors. We're going to be looking at a number of errors, but in this case it tells us that there's a name error, and it says name is not defined, and we'll discuss that a little bit more. But generally that's what you're going to get if you don't have a variable that's defined. And so let's just print that out. Okay, so we printed the name and we have Bob. All right, so the first thing I need to talk about is just the proper language of variables. And so the one thing we need to do is we need to first declare a variable, and then we need to assign a value. Okay, so we declare and assign. All right, so the process of creating this variable is declaring, and we assigned it using the assignment operator, and which is Bob in this case. So first name is equal to Bob, and we have just assigned and declared a value of Bob, and we print it out. All right, let's create another one. Let's go age, and so we're going to say age, and Bob's age is 20. Okay, so we're going to make Bob 20, and we're going to print out Bob's age. Okay, and everything looks good. I'm going to stop this and run it again. Let me clear it again. All right, so notice that we get Bob and we get 20. So we're able to print the name and the age. All right. Let's do Bob's GPA. So I'm going to say GPA, and Bob has a GPA of 3.85. All right, and then I'm just going to simply print his GPA. So I'm just going to go ahead and run it. Oh boy, here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and run it, and we get Bob 20 and 3.85. So in this case, we've declared 3 variables. We have assigned a value to each of the variables, and now we're going to get into something called data types. And so this, as we've discussed in previous videos, this is actually a string. Okay, this variable is called an int, okay, or integer, and this is a float. All right, so a string is just anything that goes inside of quotes. It's a string. We could actually put a number inside of a string, and this is still going to be a string. Let me do a Control Z on that. So anything that's inside of a quote is a string. Anything that's basically a whole number is an integer in Python, and in this case we have 3.85. So anything that is that has a decimal point is a float. Now with data types, and let me print that out, write that out for you in the comments. So data type. Okay, so a data type is in all languages. They have different things. They have different functions, and they're important to know what. It's important to know what type of data that you're dealing with, because you can run into a lot of errors, and I'm going to explain a lot of that in the upcoming video. but it's really important. So that's pretty much, actually, I want to cover one more. So let's say we're going to do a Boolean value, and a Boolean value is just a true false value. So we could say if let's say Bob is not, let's see if Bob is he present or not present. So I'll do is present, and I'm going to set that value to true. Okay, so that means that Bob is present. I'm going to print that value out. So I'm going to say is present, and I'm going to print that out, and we get Bob. Let me clear this out here. Okay, so we get Bob 23.85 and true, because we set the value to true. Now again, this is a Boolean value, and a Boolean can only be true or false. All right. Now, if you plan to learn any other languages, this is going to hold true for every single language. Most of them have data types. In Python, there are a number of data types. I'm not sure how many exactly. I believe there's probably around, I don't know, let's say 15 data types. In Java, there are 8, I believe. So it depends on which language that you're dealing with. You will deal with different data types. Okay. But for the purposes of this video, just wanted to cover variables. Now, the last thing I want to cover is the rules for naming variables. Okay. So the first thing is they have to start with a letter. Okay. So as we've done here, you can't have a variable start with a number. Right? You can't have like 2 and then last name or something like that. You can't do that. You cannot have a space. So I can't create a variable that says first space name. Can't do that. All right. Now, if you noticed up here for first name, I actually just put first underscore name. But there's a style, and this is called camel case. So I could also create the variable, and I could do first with a capital letter for each other word, and I could do first name. I could also name a variable like that. But for the purposes of Python, it's recommended that you use the underscore when you have separate words. So for example, if I was going to do last name, I would do last underscore name. All right, and I could set that to whatever value I want. Okay. So that would cover just variable naming rules. All right, so that's all I want to cover for variables. We covered declaring and assigning values. We covered just a few of the strings that we're going to work with. We're not going to cover all of the data types in Python. We're just going to focus on a few, the most common. But we covered data types. So we covered the string, the int, the float, the Boolean value, and we printed those out to the screen. All right. And then we also talked about just variable names, the rules, as well as what Python suggests as far as variables. So again, when we have, let's say we're going to name a variable, another variable, we're going to say middle. So let's say we have middle name. So I'm going to say middle. Can't do something like this, right? So that's actually illegal. Okay. So you could say Paul. That is illegal. You cannot name a variable like that. You cannot have a dash. So I'm going to use the underscore, which is the recommended way. But again, some people use camel case in other languages. You could name a variable like that, or the proper word would be declare. But in this case, we're going to just stick with the underscore. All right. So that's going to cover everything for this video. I will see you in the next video. And if you liked it, don't forget to like the video as well as subscribe to the channel.